Hello, and it's time for another episode of your favourite cricket chat here at the Wicket, Arab News' very own cricketing podcast. I'm your host, Brian Murgatroyd, and with me once again to discuss what's happening in the sport locally in the Gulf, regionally in Asia and worldwide, are Arab News columnist Jon Pike and Arab News cricket reporter Subas Humagain. Hello, gentlemen.
Hello, Brian. Hello, Subas.
Hi, guys.
And in this show, we chat about an enthralling test match in Guyana with South Africa overcoming the West Indies to secure a series win. We discuss the island women's squad's superb comeback against their Sri Lanka counterparts, including a 2020 international victory and a one-day international series win. We speak about Ollie Pope's elevation to the England men's test captaincy and Sri Lanka's build-up to their three-match series in the UK, including news of an unwelcome distraction. We reflect upon the conclusion of the fourth season of the 100 in England and Wales and ask what comes next for the tournament that divides opinion like little else in the sport. We revisit the subject of the location for the upcoming ICC Women's T20 World Cup. We speak about Pakistan's decision to switch its test against Bangladesh from Karachi to Rawalpindi at the 11th hour due to building work, and assess comment out of the Board of Control for Cricket in India about whether India will tour Pakistan for next year's ICC Champions Trophy. We talk about the latest tri-series in the World Cup League 2, with the Netherlands, the USA and Canada competing, with places in the next ICC Cricket World Cup qualifier the prize at stake. And on top of all that, as ever, Sebastian and John tell us what's caught their attention in the world of cricket in the recent past. Lots then to discuss, so let's get started. South Africa won the second test and with it their two-match series against the West Indies with a 44-run success in a thrilling encounter in Guyana. 17 wickets fell on the opening day, with South Africa bowled out for 160 as Shamar Joseph took 5 for 33 in his first test in his home country. Back came South Africa to claim an unlikely first innings lead of 16, thanks in large measure to player of the match Wiaan Mulder's 4 for 32. South Africa then appeared to be batting themselves into an impregnable position and reached 224 for 5 early on day 3 before Jaden Searle's 6 for 61 helped bring about a collapse that saw the visitors lose their last 5 wickets for just 22. It left the West Indies needing 263 for a series win, but although 5 batters reached 20, no one could go on and make a significant contribution, and with 4 South Africa bowlers sharing the spoils, the home side fell agonisingly short. John, ultimately, although both sides showed frailty with the bat, this test seemed to be won and lost through the West Indies' failings in that regard, and Captain Craig Brathwaite admitted as much afterwards. That's 5 tests in quick succession West Indies have played now against England and now South Africa. Can you see any progression at all in terms of that batting issue for the side?
Well, you hope that they could improve with experience, but there's certainly some way to go in terms of consistency. And I think that the test team really has been left high and dry by the attractions of T20 franchise cricket for key players.
Yes, losing players like, for example, Nicholas Pooran, who's now on the T20 franchise circuit full-time. Subas, South Africa's red ball coach, Shukri Conrad, was very bullish after the win, talking about the possibility of reaching the World Test Championship final. Is that simply a fantasy, given how far India and Australia are ahead in the table, or could it possibly come to pass?
Oh, well, the talk of final is a bit relevant considering the Proteas won't be facing England and Australia in this term. But I think not so long ago, they found it hard to field competitive team in the field with fixture crash with the franchise league. So we know where the priority of the board was back then. But given they've full strength squad now, and if they can carry that squad for all matches here, and I think there is a possibility of them acquiring the top 2 position.
And Subas, we spoke about Keshav Maharaj on the previous podcast as he took 8 wickets in a rain-affected first match of the series. Let's now speak of Kagiso Rabada. 4 crucial wickets in the Test, including 3 in the decisive final innings, and now he has 299 in the longest format. He averages almost 5 wickets a Test. He takes his wickets at just 22 apiece. In this series, he went past Jacques Kallis's Test wicket tally, and now he's 6th in the all-time South Africa list. He's 140 wickets behind Dale Steyn. Shouldn't we now be talking about him as an all-time Test great?
I think Rabada has had very little injury concerns affecting his national duty, and he impressed with his express pace early in the Test career and hasn't looked back since. I remember he had to fill in Dale Steyn against England in just his second series, and I think he took 2 fifers, 10 wicket apiece, match-winning performance as well. So he's done the same since then, backing with his numbers, and I think he belongs to the list of elite bowlers. He's yet to enter his 30s, so if he can balance franchise and national duty, I think he'll be out of the list and certainly a legendary status.
John, there's now a 3-match T20 international series between the two sides, and the West Indies have left out Andre Russell, Jason Holder and Alzari Joseph. Given neither Russell nor Joseph played in the Test series, isn't this just another example of players missing international cricket following T20 franchise league commitments? And doesn't that leave the West Indies public and indeed the rest of the cricket world a little bit shortchanged as a result?
Well, it's said that Russell requested a period of rest and recovery. Holder likewise. In Holder's case, he's put in some hard yards for the West Indies in the most 2 recent Test series, so I can understand that in his case. Of course, he's beginning to get on a bit. Alzari Joseph, not so clear-cut a case. Rested for the South Africa series, so maybe they want to try other options in T20. Does it leave the public cricket world shortchanged? But it's not a bad squad. It does contain the likes of Rodman Powell and, as you mentioned, Pooran, Sean Hitmare, Shai Hope and Rutherford. So it's not a weak side.
Well, that T20I series gets underway on Friday, August the 23rd, and the matches serve as an aperitif for the Caribbean Premier League that gets underway straight off the back of it and runs until the first week of October. We'll preview that in our next episode. In the meantime, one other piece of West Indies-related news for you, and Cricket West Indies CEO Johnny Grave has announced he's stepping down from his role in October of this year. He's been in position for just over 7 years. Subas, how do you assess his legacy? Is West Indies cricket in a better place than it was when he took over, do you think?
Well, it was not the best time for him to come with players and franchise battle going on, but organization side of things, I think to host 3 ICC events with COVID affecting, I think that's a great job. The West Indies leg of recently held T20 World Cup was great too, with lots of credit to him leading that scene. But the dispute between the board and the players, I think that looks to have settled in recent years, and that is a big relief. West Indies board, I think it's a bit different considering the other nations where you need to balance a lot of things with players and countries representing at the same time, and he's still not got the credit that he deserves. But the situation now there is left, and I think there's a huge gap filled for President Kishore Salo and the board.
John, could Johnny Grave's biggest gift, not only to West Indies cricket, but also the global game, be that he seems to have got the idea of financial assistance for the lesser ICC full members back on the agenda?
Yeah, I agree with Subas about his legacy. He's also delivered surpluses for Cricket West Indies. Whether raising the financial situation of the lesser full members will be a future gift, I think the only time will tell. The big question is, who will pick up his voice now he's not there?
Well, for this next segment, I'll start with an apology. In our last episode, I looked at the Sri Lanka women's convincing win in their first T20 international against Ireland, married that with the fact that Sri Lanka had, in the past few months, won the T20 World Cup qualifier, beaten the West Indies and won the Asia Cup, allied that with the fact that Ireland had failed to qualify for that T20 World Cup, and predicted further Sri Lanka wins on the ongoing tour. Well, how wrong I was. Ireland won the second T20 international to tie that 2-match series off the back of Gabby Lewis's brilliant 119 from 75 balls. And then, astonishingly, they won the first 2 matches of a 3-match one-day international series, their first wins in this ongoing ICC Women's Championship. In the first of those one-day internationals, Ireland chased 261 to win, led by Orla Prendergast's brilliant 100 122, and she added an unbeaten 50 in 6 overs for the 8th wicket with Jane Maguire. And that was after Vishmi Gunaratne had made 101 in 98 balls for the visitors. And then in game 2, with Amy Hunter, Leah Paul and Rebecca Stokel all passing 50, Ireland made 255 and won by 15 runs after Sri Lanka had at one stage reached 172 for 2 as Harshitha Samarawickrama scored 105. John, I'm eating a large slice of humble pie, but what a performance by Ireland. What do you put it down to?
Well, it's a sensational story, certainly completely out of the blue. I think you're excused because I think we all thought the same as you did. So I've no idea how these ladies plucked these performances seemingly out of nowhere, and especially after being asked to bat in the second match, being placed under even more pressure. As you mentioned, Gabby Lewis set the trend, but they're all-round performances from Leah Paul, Rebecca Stokel, Christine Coulter-Riley, and it appears that suddenly there's a depth of talent that was previously hidden.
Yes, and it's also worth bearing in mind that those 3 wins came with 3 different captains, as Laura Delaney and then Gabby Lewis both got injured, so that Orla Prendergast captained the side in the second one-day international. So 3 captains, 3 wins. Thank you very much. Subas, to what do you attribute Sri Lanka's 3 successive losses? Chamari Atapattu was back for the one-day internationals after missing the 2020 internationals because of her commitment with the Oval Invincibles in the 100. But it's certainly a remarkable turnaround, isn't it?
Well, even I did not see that coming. Ireland were exceptional with the bat, and the formula was simple. One leads the batting, and others just contributed to that cause, something Sri Lanka had been doing for some time now, but that didn't work out this time. But for Ireland, I think there were different leaders. Sri Lanka had the centurions in both the games, but there was no support from others, and Samari getting out golden duck didn't help in any way.
And Subas, in the last episode, you were cautious about Sri Lanka's T20 World Cup chances off the back of their recent successes. Well, that caution seems to have been very well placed. Is this type of setback a reality check they need to temper expectations, or could it have a very negative effect going into that mega tournament?
Well, you can say the conditions played some role in this series, but with the future of tournament in Bangladesh still up in the air, I think the event is most likely to be held in subcontinent, but Sri Lanka definitely will be more stronger in that reason. But this surely has let them know that if they don't produce their best cricket, it's not going to be easy, and it's timely remembrance for them.
And Subas, what do these one-day international losses do for Sri Lanka's chances of qualifying automatically for next year's ICC Women's Cricket World Cup, I wonder, as these 50-over-a-side matches are all part of the ICC Women's Championship, which is a route to that event?
It's a huge blow. I think they could have thought that this is a 3-0 win and they could have comfortably stayed in top 4 of the table and booked their place. But what this result has done is, I think Ireland were without a win. Sri Lanka needed all 3 wins, but I think it's opened the way for New Zealand and the West Indies to topple them now. It won't be easy for Windies against Bangladesh in India, but you never know with the way Ireland has produced. You can't counteract right now.
Yes, it's certainly made the latter stages of the ICC Women's Championship very, very interesting indeed. John, these wins for Ireland, well, you could argue they couldn't be better timed, really, could they? Coming off the back of an announcement about a new national cricket stadium in the south of Ireland, which has been green-lighted by the Irish government. It's good news all the way now, isn't it?
Yes, new stadium's planned for West Dublin, 4,000 capacity, hopefully in operation by 2028 in time for the 2030 Men's T20 World Cup, which Ireland sharing with England and Scotland. It includes a high-performance centre as well. And I think it's very important for Ireland because of the cost of setting up venues for international matches, particularly at Malahide, that have led to cancellations or use of overseas venues. It's also good news, and it follows approval for a multi-sport redevelopment at Stormont in Belfast to the sum of about £25 million.
Exciting times then for Irish cricket. The final one-day international of the 3-match series is being played as we record this podcast. We'll reflect upon that in our next episode. Also getting underway as we record this podcast is the start of the England-Sri Lanka men's test series. There are 3 matches at Old Trafford in Manchester, plus 2 games in London at Lord's and the Oval. And the fact they are going ahead is good news given Sri Lanka's previously stated concerns about security following widespread disorder in the UK at the start of this month. We'll reflect upon the first test in our next episode, but for now, let's talk about a couple of interesting talking points, the first of which is the absence of England captain Ben Stokes with a hamstring injury and the elevation of his vice-captain Ollie Pope to the role. John, I just wondered, do you have any concerns about Pope taking on the captaincy? He had a good series with the bat against the West Indies with 100 at Trent Bridge plus 2 other scores over 50. But before that, his form had been sketchy. And in 5 innings for London Spirit in the recent 100, he made only 35 runs. What are your thoughts about him taking on that extra responsibility?
Well, he's an unknown quantity as a captain. Maybe that extra responsibility is going to bring out the best in him. And clearly management must see that he's got the necessary qualities. And he has been vice-captain for a while now, as you point out. If not him, who does it? Roots, been and gone. Crawl is a possible contender, but he's out injured. And most of the rest are either young or have little to no experience. I don't think they've a great deal of alternative.
Well, John, you're attending that first test. What do you want to see from Ollie Pope and England in this test series as a whole?
Well, it will be interesting to see how much Pope can carry on in the same vein as Stokes, who's one of a kind and has such authority. I don't really expect much change in approach, perhaps a more measured approach to batting, which a number of us would like to see. But overall, I think the ball will be handed to the quicks. I think we're going to be a bit too much for Sri Lanka.
Subas, Sri Lanka's preparation for the series could hardly be said to be ideal. They had to arrive in 2 groups. There were those players who were test specialists and then those who were playing in the one-day international series at home against India. They arrived in the midst of the unrest in the UK, which left them feeling vulnerable. And then, in their solitary warm-up game against a very inexperienced England Lions side, they were beaten easily by 7 wickets. Doesn't augur well for a competitive test series, does it?
Even though the main target of the practice match was to get acclimatized, it will have some effect on the players. But the positive side is the second innings was much better than the first, where none of the batters turned up. So they just need to ride on that now. And in bowling side, I think the batsmen need to step up big time. We've seen England bowlers on a song, they're having selection headaches and all, but I think Sri Lanka will find it hard to put on a proper press unit.
Well, we'll get first-hand reflections on that opening test from John in our next episode. But before we move on, there's one other piece of Sri Lankan news to bring you, and it's that Sri Lanka wicketkeeper batter Niroshan Dickwella has been banned indefinitely by Sri Lanka cricket after a doping violation following a test during the recent Lanka Premier League. Dickwella, who captained the Gaul Marvels during that tournament, was not part of the Sri Lanka tour party to the UK and hasn't played international cricket in 2024. But this is still a highly embarrassing situation, both for him and for Sri Lanka cricket. Subas, your reaction to the news?
Shocking, and that too from a senior player, someone who's played international cricket for more than a decade. I think it should be serious, and with him turning into 30s, I think this could mark full stop to his international career now.
John, should we laud Sri Lanka cricket for due diligence in testing, or is this another black mark against a tournament that seems to be riddled with controversy? There was the issue with the new owner of the Dambula franchise being arrested over corruption allegations before a ball was bowled this season, and earlier this month, international spinner Praveen Jayawickrama was charged with 3 counts of breaching the ICC Code of Conduct in matters relating to the 2021 edition. It just keeps on giving, and not in a good way, the Lanka Premier League, doesn't it?
Yes, I think it does appear to be something of a basket case. I would have thought it needs to be independently investigated, and it's really in danger of bringing the game into disrepute.
Well, rest assured, we'll keep you up to date with this story on Dickwella here at The Wicket, so please stay with us. It's either the best development in cricket in England and Wales over the past few years, or it's a symbol of all that's wrong with the modern game. Yes, it's the 100, and it's wrapped up with the Oval Invincibles men's side retaining their title against Southern Brave, while London Spirit secured a first title in the women's competition, beating Welsh Fire in a thriller. That men's tournament sparked into life at the back end of the action, with Southern Brave qualifying for the final off the back of a Super 5, that's the hundreds equivalent of a super over, against Birmingham Phoenix, while London Spirit, led by England captain Heather Knight and including Australia's Meg Lanning and India's Dipti Sharma, got across the line with just 2 balls in hand against Welsh Fire. The ECB has been keen to point out that ticket sales have been strong, and a desire to push that narrative has been in part, no doubt, due to the fact that the teams are up for sale on the open market next month. The host venues have 51% of the team, although they can sell as much or as little of that if they want, while the other 49% can go to whoever may be interested in picking up a franchise. All sorts of rumours are swirling around, with one that the Mumbai Indians may be keen to buy into one of the London sides. John, first things first, was the 100 a success this season? Or should, I wonder, we look at it in another way? Should we separate out the men's and women's tournaments in making that assessment, as the women's competition seemed very well received, while the men's, aside from the last few matches, was much less well regarded? What do you think?
Yeah, I agree with that. I mean, the women's attracts the best from around the world, and the men's doesn't. As you mentioned, the ECB are keen to talk up a number of tickets they sold, but apparently the TV viewing figures were down on previous years. I think we can say that whatever happens, it's going to be looking very different in 2025 compared with the 4 years it's been in existence.
And John, it seems like nothing is off the table coming into this trip to the market by the England and Wales Cricket Board, even to the extent of teams perhaps being renamed to reflect their prospective new owners. I just wonder, though, isn't that a bit self-defeating by the ECB, given the talk this season from the powers that be has been that they want to create greater tribalism and loyalty to the teams? Well, how can they do that and also allow team names to change?
Well, it's inevitable that various parts of control will have to be ceded if top money is going to be obtained. We think we know that Hampshire's going to be sold for 120 million, lock, stock and barrel, to the company that owns the Delhi Capitals. So who knows in future what the Southern Braves will be called? Delhi Braves, Southampton Capitals, who knows? There is a feeling, though, of things are being made up as they go along. And there's little doubt that the Indians are crawling all over it. Again, as you mentioned, there's no shortage of rumour, but there's a distinct shortage of facts so far. But a lot to emerge over the next coming months.
Subas, as someone not resident in the UK, I just wonder, does the 100 resonate with you at all? And if not, would it do so more if some of the teams were connected to other franchises from other competitions, like, for example, the Indian Premier League?
Well, started and it ended. That's all the buzz there was in our part of the world. County, the Blast, the 100. It's hard to keep up with all the happening inside UK cricket circle. If there was inter-franchise connections or even players from our region, it could have appealed audience. But so far, none of it.
And John, there's been lots of talk about trying to make the 100 the best versus the best. This is something you talked about a little earlier. And while that largely happened in the women's competition, it seems a very long way off in the men's event. I just wonder, would an injection of money from new owners and the potential to pay players more help to rectify that by encouraging players to choose the 100 over, say, Canada or even a Bahamas T20 tournament that's just got underway over the last few days?
I don't doubt that more money would lead to more top male players signing up for the 100. It's sad but true. It's a real bun fight for players out there in an unregulated market.
Subas, England has a vacancy for a men's white ball coach, and now Tom Moody has led the Oval Invincibles to a second consecutive title in the men's competition. If you were Rob Key, the England director of cricket, would you be picking up the phone to him?
Well, he's not the new name in world cricket, having led various teams, and him winning 2 titles in the 100 means he has got up close with the players in the team and the opposition as well. So if he's in the market, it could be an ideal option.
And John, Gus Atkinson was pulled out of the final of the tournament to ensure he was ready for the Test series against Sri Lanka. But that gave a chance to Saqib Mahmood, the one-time England fast bowler who's been plagued with back trouble over the past 2 years, and he responded with 3 for 17. What a good news story that was.
Yeah, Saqib's had a very difficult time. It's good to see him back. One time time, he was the leading contender for the Test team. Whether his back's strong enough for the longer game, we'll have to wait and see.
And Subas, how much value has this tournament been for England's women, do you think, and indeed international players taking part from other countries ahead of the T20 World Cup?
I think a women's game is a bit different because there are some big players, the elites playing in the tournament, and there are very few tournaments for women of this stature. WBL comes to my mind, and to have such tournament, I think it's good for English cricketers as well as other cricketers because you're playing against the best and you're testing your domestic cricketers as well. So I think it's good for English cricket overall.
Well, one thing is for certain, there'll be plenty of chat around the 100 over the next couple of months as the process of securing outside investment continues. And as the situation develops, we'll update you here at the Wicket. In our previous episode, we discussed whether the Women's T20 World Cup, which is due to get underway in early October with warm-up matches in the week before that, whether it would still take place in Bangladesh in the light of ongoing political instability in the country following the overthrow of Sheikh Hasina's government. Well, since we last spoke, there have been some interesting developments. The Secretary of the Board of Control for Cricket in India, Jay Shah, has ruled out his country hosting the tournament if it needs to be shifted, and Zimbabwe Cricket has expressed an interest in doing so if necessary. And bear in mind, Zimbabwe hasn't qualified for the event. We're expecting to hear from the ICC in the near future as to whether the tournament will proceed in Bangladesh, but it was interesting to hear from Alyssa Healy, the Australia women's captain, over the past few days, expressing a view that she didn't think the tournament should go ahead in Bangladesh. This is obviously a fluid situation, but John, first of all, your reaction to all that's happened?
Well, I was very surprised by Shah's announcement refusing to host the event on the grounds of not wanting to host consecutive World Cups, which is an amazing outbreak of self-awareness. Actually cited monsoon season. The alternatives? Well, Sri Lanka, wouldn't that also be affected by monsoon season? UAE wouldn't get the crowds. Zimbabwe, a bit left field. Presuming it needs to be pretty well the same time zone, given that broadcasting schedules, I guess, will already have been drawn up. So it's a bit of a conundrum, I think. I think it's unlikely that it's going to go ahead in Bangladesh unless things quieten down very quickly.
Yes, it remains to be seen what the ICC decide there. I think Sri Lanka has to be a non-starter because October is traditionally the wettest month of the year there. So if you're going to stage a cricket event in October, well, you're asking for trouble, in my opinion, at least. Subas, you expressed your reservations about whether Bangladesh could remain as host, especially as several of the competing teams' governments have ongoing travel advisories against going to the country at the moment. What are your views now?
Well, India backing out to host does explain that there has been movement in the background and ICC are seeking options. Things are settling in, and Bangladesh, the under-20 football team came Nepal very late for championship just this week. But for what I've heard, I think there's still a lot of assurances required before you host a World Cup, and the situation doesn't look any better till now.
And Subas, time is obviously running short now as teams will be travelling for the tournament in just a month's time. What's the end game here, do you think?
I think all I see is change of venue or change of dates, or even both at this time. I don't see tournament going ahead as scheduled in Bangladesh. I think for that to happen, there should be a big step from the government, and I think it's not the time for them to focus on outside things there, then solve the inside problem. So I think a change of date or venue is the ideal option.
Well, rest assured, we'll stay across this issue and discuss it further, no doubt at all, in further episodes. A two-test series between Pakistan and Bangladesh men's teams is getting underway as we record this podcast, and we'll cover off the first match next time round. But in the meantime, let's discuss a very interesting topic connected with the series, the flip-flopping of the Pakistan Cricket Board over the venue for the first match. It was originally due to take place in Karachi, with spectators allowed in despite work taking place at the National Stadium ahead of next year's ICC ICC Champions Trophy. But in light of that work, the PCB then announced the match would take place behind closed doors. Then, however, they subsequently decided that the match would be switched to Rawalpindi, the venue for the second test, with spectators allowed. Subas, the confusion over the venue suggests a lack of thought from someone at the PCB. What do you make of it all?
I think that's just one example how things work in PCB. I think the lack of clarity within those in board has held the team behind for a long time now, and there's been changes in personnel, but I think the culture is still there, and they need to get above that if they want to have better future hosting the games.
And John, talking of the Champions Trophy, whether India will travel to Pakistan for that tournament is already a hot topic, given neither team is currently touring the other at the moment. Jay Shah, the BCCI secretary, was asked about it, and he has been quoted as saying, and I quote, "No decision has been finalised yet, no stand as of now. We will cross the bridge when it comes." What's your reading of that comment?
Well, it's not a categorical no, as it usually is. We know the decision is going to be Modi's and Mr. Shah's father as Minister of Interior. It sounds as if the door may be slightly ajar. But, it only takes one incident for it to shut very firmly. And I guess one of the issues is the size of the security bill and who pays for it.
Yes, as Mr. Shah said, a lot of water to go under that particular bridge that he's talking about. Subas, you have to say, uncertainty leading into the Champions Trophy as to whether India will actually go to Pakistan, that's not good for the tournament as a whole, is it?
It's not good for the game. We know how India reacts to Pakistan even when the things are normal, but Pakistan Cricket Board themselves have not helped with recent developments. Unstable board, lack of clarity of tournaments venues mean India will push them harder, and ICC Champions Trophy taking the route of Asia Cup with India trying to play the matches away, and that would mean more financial problem for Pakistan, and without India I think the tournament won't be possible, so they're bound to take the games away.
Well, John, what's your opinion in that regard? What is the end game here? Is it India playing its matches outside Pakistan, and what would happen if that was the case, if India were to get to the final?
Well, I'd be very surprised if India played a final in Pakistan, especially if they were playing against Pakistan. I don't think that's a runner. Pakistan's suggestion was for India to play its matches in Lahore, closest to the border. I think it's very unlikely that India will visit Pakistan. Subas said, what's the tournament without India? But, it all gets rather, I don't know, boring is not the right word, but tedious, I think, is probably a better word. That constantly we have India trying to call the shots. I mean, I'd be inclined to play the tournament without them.
Well, we'll keep across the issue of India's participation in the ICC Champions Trophy and indeed the first test between Pakistan and Bangladesh in Rawalpindi, and we'll report back here at the Wicket. The second tier of men's one-day international cricket, World Cup League 2, is ongoing with the latest action, a tri-series between the hosts, the Netherlands, the USA and Canada. As we record this podcast, the Dutch have played 3 and won 3 in this round of matches, and they're just one game away against the USA from a clean sweep of this round. They've moved to the top of the 8-team table ahead of current champions Scotland. Early pace setters Canada have lost all 4 of their matches in their first series after the sacking of coach Prabuddha Dassanayaka, and for the USA, this has been their first action in this World Cup League 2. They've not been at full strength, but then neither are the Dutch, but it's still been a pretty decent advert for top associate cricket. Subas, what have you made of what's gone on in the Netherlands?
Well, everything is going on as expected. Canada looked like they hit rock bottom, and that was expected with things behind the scenes. Dots bringing their A game in home turf. USA were in the match, but I think they could have done better in that Dots game, only to collapse towards the end. But there's progress in US cricket with even without some of the players. They're playing their A cricket, and Stuart Laws looks to have made his mark in this coaching role. But Canada, on the other hand, I think they have themselves to blame for this.
The top 4 sides at the moment, the Dutch, Scotland, Canada and Namibia, they've played more matches than those below them. That's Oman, the USA, Nepal and the UAE. There is a gap that's opened up. I just wonder how significant is that gap at this stage, or is it too early to be relevant? given it's a real marathon, this competition, rather than a sprint, with each team playing a total of 36 matches.
It's too early to measure that, but Dots, I think they're level above the rest, and with the brand of the cricket they play, they were in the Super League last year and were demoted because of lack of clarity in ICC pathways. But they're one to beat in this one. Canada, they look out of touch, and at the moment, I think they're a bit below with the player they have as well. But for the rest, I think the playing field is level, and anyone could beat anyone in this league too.
Yes, it's a terrific competition. And John, just one very pleasing aspect for me was to see Shariz Ahmed, the young Dutch leg spinner, getting the chance to bat up the order. I saw he went in at number 7 against Canada. He's a technically correct left-hander who I saw start his one-day international career off at number 11. But it's another illustration, isn't it, of a young talent that's come through for the Dutch. It's just a case if only they can get enough top-quality cricket to help it flourish.
Yeah, that's an issue for all those teams. Scotland being a good example of one that's voiced this desire on many occasions. And of course, they are going to get a chance against Australia next month.
Yes, that's encouragement for Scotland. A 3-match T20I series at home at the beginning of September as Australia make their way from Scotland then down to England to play some white ball cricket. A reminder, the top 4 sides in World Cup League 2 are guaranteed spots in the ICC Cricket World Cup qualifier. We'll wrap up this latest round of matches in more detail next time. And finally, gentlemen, as we always do, let's hear from you about something that's caught your attention this week in the world of cricket. Subas, first of all?
Well, the Nepal Premier League is finally announced and in the window of December. So somewhere there's no another franchise cricket league colliding with them. So excited. Finally, the Cricket Association has stepped up to make a franchise league of their own, and hopefully along the lines of what other associate cricket boards have managed to stack up.
And what's the expectation there, Subas? Because in the past, T20 cricket hasn't been without its controversies in terms of the organisation in Nepal. Is the expectation that this time it's going to run very smoothly?
Expectation is there and the belief is there as well, because previously it used to be some company taking over the rights, paying the license fee and all. But this time the board has stepped up. Paras Khadka, the secretary, the former captain, has made a team himself, and the board is taking responsibility of everything. So there's a sense of belief as well. There's been a huge number of interest in taking the franchises as well, not just from inside the country, but outside the country as well. So there's a belief that this time around, everything will go right.
Well, that's encouraging to hear. And Paras Khadka, he really has done a fantastic job in his role with the Cricket Association of Nepal in a relatively short space of time, and more power to him, I say. Anyway, John, what about you? What's caught your attention this week?
Well, the fact that the World Cricket Association, body representing the players, is undertaking a comprehensive review of the game's global structure. It says it's given up hope that the game's leaders could establish a clear and coherent structure in which international cricket and domestic leagues can coexist. And I think we all go along with that. It ought to be the governing body that undertakes such a task. But a 6-member group will lead the review. Of course, it excludes India and Pakistan, both of which are non-unionised. So while the results may well be illuminating, I suspect they're going to be pretty toothless. But what did get me spluttering a little bit is one member of the group is Tom Harrison, a former CEO of the England and Wales Cricket Board and partly responsible for introducing the 100, which casts him as one of those dissemblers who have added to the current mess.
It'll be interesting to see what conclusions that particular group comes up with, including Tom Harrison. So we'll watch there with bated breath. But as you say, John, with India and Pakistan not represented, and the fact that they've got 2 of the bigger T20 franchise tournaments under their wings as well, you wondered just how much value that particular think tank will have and what it will achieve. But that remains to be seen, I guess. Anyway, that's all for this episode of The Wicket. We'll be back soon with more cricket chat from the Gulf region, Asia and worldwide. As ever, please don't forget to like, subscribe and comment on what you've heard wherever you get your podcast. But for now, this is Brian Murgatroyd along with Jon Pike and Subas Humagain saying thanks so much for listening. Until next time, goodbye.
Yeah, goodbye.
Goodbye.